Welcome to Costume Drama Sunday. We are going to watch The Crown today. I asked people on TikTok what I should watch, either The Crown or the movie The Queen, and everyone overwhelmingly wanted The Crown, which I'm very happy with because I am a huge fan of The Crown. You're not really allowed to say that anymore these days, which I mean, I guess a lot of criticism is very fair. I've criticized it myself, but I do believe that the first two seasons of The Crown are pieces of art. I love it a lot. So I'm looking forward to this a lot. I have to say, the first episode, first season, there's not a lot of historical inaccuracy. I'm going to try and find it anyway. FYI, I have interned as a royal reporter and I've specialised in royal history at university. I've also pretty much followed the British royal family for the past decade now, around 12, 13 years, I would actually say. So, I mean, women don't like to call themselves experts, but if I'm an expert on anything, it's probably the British royal family. Well, that's not entirely true, but yeah, I'm gonna try and do my best to fact check the hell out of it. Let's go. So I'm pretty sure that the first season actually covers around a decade. So it starts in 1947, which is the year that Elizabeth marries Prince Philip, and then it ends around the mid 1950s, I think. So the first episode is called Wolverton Splash, which is an area around Sandringham estate that they are hunting in at the end of this episode. Spoiler alert. Yeah, so the whole show starts with George VI coughing up blood the day before his daughter gets married in 1947. That is not true. He only started showing signs of his eventual diagnosis of lung cancer a year later, a full year later. And he only got that diagnosis in 1951, which is a year before he died. So this is the first scene of this episode, of this season, of the whole show, and it's not true.
Prince Philip of Greece and of Denmark renounces his Greek nationality.
So this is historically inaccurate, but it's complicated and I understand that they mashed it all together. What they're showing here didn't happen the day before they got married, but happened over the span of 1947. So they're showing here that Philip renounces his title as Prince of Greece and Denmark. That had already happened in February 1947, which was before his engagement was announced. That happened in July. And then the day before he got married, the 19th of November, Philip was given a knighthood, the Royal Order of the Garter, which is the oldest knighthood still used, created in the 14th century by Edward III. I think that same day, the day before he got married, he was also given the His Royal Highness title, but he was not, as shown here, already given the title of Duke of Edinburgh and a couple of other titles. So for a full day, or like a couple of hours at least, Prince Philip was His Royal Highness Sir Philip Lieutenant Mountbatten or something like that. And then the day after he got married, he became the Duke of Edinburgh. The day he got married, and he was His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh. Not until 1957, which I think they show in season 2, yeah, they definitely show that in season 2, he became a Prince of the United Kingdom. And that is when he got his title that he would end up having for the rest of his life, which is His Royal Highness the Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. There you go. Yeah, George VI had a huge stammer. That is definitely accurate. I'm not sure if he would have written that down. That is a costume that is directly modelled after the dress that she was wearing in pictures taken of the royal family in July when their engagement was announced. They had already gotten engaged in 1946, but they kept the engagements a secret because George VI did not want the engagement announced until Elizabeth had turned 21. So they waited until February of the next year.
Sure you wouldn't prefer one of those, someone with a grand title, rather than a homeless Charlie Crown?
No. When the engagement sort of leaked, around half of Britain did not think he was well suited. He was considered a foreigner, not considered a popular option at all. No.
You still have 24 hours to change your mind.
What? You think I can change my mind after all that? No. Too late.
I do really agree that they sort of turned Philip into a bit of a villain in this show that I don't think he necessarily deserves. Constantly whining about his place as like second behind the Queen. Something he would have known when he got married to her, right? Like that, she was always the heir. So there's just no point in him being so shocked. It's kind of silly, to be honest.
Try and get some sleep.
You too?
No, I do actually kind of like Matt Smith. as Prince Philip. Not everyone does, but I think he has that charisma, the sort of dark humor that Philip for sure had. I think he gives a good go at that. But Claire Foy as the Queen is just genius casting. Definitely the best out of all the queens that the Crown did. She was 100% the best.
Christ sakes, James! You're making bloody hard going out of this collar!
Yeah, George VI really did had these I want to say bouts of regression, but yeah, he could definitely have anger attacks, yeah. And even more so, he was an aggressive smoker in the sense that he smoked all day, every day, couldn't put them away, and that would definitely end up killing him, yeah. These costumes are just amazingly done. I just looked it up and that wedding dress cost them 30K to recreate it, and that is more than it cost them to make it at the time. It is actually false that she had to collect these ration coupons because this is 1947, so they were all on rations still. It's not true that Princess Elizabeth had to collect ration coupons. They were gifted to her, but it was illegal to give ration coupons away for obvious reasons. And that is when the government decided to give them the coupons that she needed themselves. So yeah, it was purchased with coupons, but no, she didn't actually have to save them up. What I do think is a very fun fact about this wedding dress is that it's created with silk that came from Chinese silk, and they wanted to avoid using Japanese silk worms because of the Second World War. So this whole dress, it does have a very Second World War story to it. Yeah, at this point, Winston Churchill was not the Prime Minister. He'd actually lost the elections, only about to win them in a couple of months from now on. Labour Party was in power, and the show kind of presents it as like a temporary setback. I don't really think so. I think the Labour Party in the 40s definitely got a lot of stuff done that we now are grateful for. I have an enormous problem with the way that Churchill's always romanticized in modern media to this day. I don't like him at all as a historic figure or as anything else, really. But there's also so much wrong with everything around this. Is just the representation of his personality. Like, Churchill's actually kind of a funny person. He's always so gruff in The Crown, but also in, like, The Darkest Hour.
This whole thing is Mountbattens' triumph. He engineered it all.
Yeah, most modern historians usually agree that it wasn't actually Lord Mountbatten who put Elizabeth and Philip together. It was Marina, Princess Marina, the Duchess of Kent, the Queen's aunt, who was also born a Princess of Greece and Denmark. So it kind of makes sense that she would have liked that match. Margaret's already having a thing for a Peter Townsend. That is accurate, actually. That was definitely already going on at this time.
My three sisters aren't here. They're all married to Nazis.
It's just not true that they're all married to Nazis. Some of Philip's sisters were definitely married to Nazis. That said, pretty much every German who had somewhat of a fancy job at that time had been a member of the Nazi Party. Doesn't necessarily mean that they did anything bad during the war or that they actually supported the Nazis. It's just that you have to be a party member to have a certain job. So yeah, to call Philip a Nazi is just inaccurate just because of his family, and in general it's inaccurate. The guy literally fought Nazis. He was in active duty during the Second World War. Prince Philip was not a Nazi. The British royal family were not Nazis, except for Edward VIII, as well as his wife Wallis Simpson. They definitely were supporters of the Nazi Party.
And to obey.
Obey?
She insisted.
Yeah, Elizabeth decided that she wanted to keep Obey in. That was indeed not a popular choice because as a future monarch, it didn't really make sense for her to promise to obey a husband.
To love and cherish and obey till death us do part.
Diana didn't do this, Kate didn't do this, who did also promise to obey. The current Duchess of Edinburgh, Sophie, she also kept in the obey.
You overestimate her.
You underestimate her.
See, this is part of this also the storyline in The Crown that I also think is kind of incorrect, which is where Elizabeth is constantly underestimated by people around her, and they talk about how ill-prepared she is. She definitely didn't expect to become queen at that early age, but she did expect to become queen at some point, and her father was ill.
Past 48 hours, reality has sunk in.
Yeah, the Queen Mum wasn't a big fan of Philip, and he wasn't a big fan of her either. That relationship wasn't very tight. I wouldn't say it was terrible, but it wasn't tight.
Would you look at the mother? Just out of a sanatorium.
I'm dressed as a nun.
Her nun.
She wasn't dressed as a nun at the wedding. There were fears that she might dress as a nun, but she didn't. If you look at pictures of Elizabeth on her wedding day, you can see that there's something wrong with her tiara. It's snatched, like it sort of broke on the day itself. You don't see that here. They didn't put that in. That would have been such an amazing detail. I would have adored it if they put that in. But no, her tiara seems to look fine. This just looks insane, doesn't it? How they've recreated this. Also just, it must be so cool to stand on that balcony. Mary's just covered in jewellery with the high neckline. Very, very accurate. Yeah, they really just completely recreated these outfits that these people were wearing on that day, including the jewellery. We get this time jump where Philip and Elizabeth are in Malta, which is where he was stationed. Most people always say that this is the time period during which Elizabeth was pretty much the happiest and also had the most normal life. She was sort of just like a military wife, or like a lieutenant wife, and they had the best of time. I mean, have you ever been to Malta? Living there, there's nothing wrong with that. She could have a pretty normal life where she would just drive around, do grocery shopping. It was, I think, a rare couple of years for her. They would go back in 2007, which is when they were celebrating their 60th wedding anniversary.
There we are. Good boy, Charles. Well done.
So it's Charles and Anne. Very cute. Most of the time they would actually remain in London with their grandparents. Obviously, Elizabeth and Philip being distant parents has been long debated. Unfortunately, that started quite early on. Charles has complained about that. Don't want to dive too deep into that sort of stuff. They were in Malta sometimes, but not all the time. Yeah, so they removed his left lung in 1951. Over what they called abnormalities, but really it was cancer. And that diagnosis was actually kept from him, from his family, and from the medical profession. Yeah, that lung is not looking good. Again, I'm pretty sure they had not even diagnosed him with a lung cancer at this point. They thought they removed the lung because they thought it was blocked.
Who won? Mr. Churchill, Your Majesty. Go for him.
The king being happy that he's getting Churchill back. Obviously, the royals have to always remain non-partisan, not non-political. That is just not true. Because I mean, he's literally head of state, so you can't be non-political while being head of state. But they are supposed to be non-partisan, which means that they don't choose between the political party. So him saying, "Oh, great, Churchill's coming back," is not non-partisan. He would definitely not have been able to say that out loud in public, but to say that the royals don't have, their own preferences, I mean, they're still human beings.
And they wouldn't have done that unless they were looking for something far more serious.
Yeah, so they're looking for something far more serious because at this point, they didn't actually decide that he had cancer yet. That took some while.
What are structural alterations?
It's what doctors say when they're trying to avoid using the word that it almost inevitably describes.
Yeah, just using difficult words not to admit that he has cancer. That is accurate, that happened. He's wearing rouge not to look ill. Everyone would notice that. I'm not sure if this is true.
Mr. Churchill, Your Majesty.
They completely recreated a drawing room, which is where the monarch meets with the Prime Minister every week. And that is just insane to me that they did that. It looks amazing. And that is one of the reasons why I love The Crown. These sort of things, they really didn't spare any budget on that. And that is what makes it look so effing good.
Bit terribly unconstitutional of me to say how happy I am.
Yeah, that would be extremely unconstitutional. Don't do it.
Probably wise to let the Princess Elizabeth undertake the Commonwealth tour.
Is she up to it?
Of course she's up to it. She's heir. She has to do these sort of tours. To make sure that she's up to it when she becomes queen, you let her do stuff like that. They should have made her do that sooner. The best part of Churchill was Lady Churchill.
Who is this?
Miss Venetia Scott, sir.
That whole character of Venetia Scott was entirely made up, and I understand why they do it to some degree, but I also wish they hadn't. It's just a very dull storyline to me.
So he's dying.
We're all dying.
I really highly doubt that the Churchills would ever have lunch in that room.
This is Clarence House dining room to Clarence House kitchen.
Yeah, Clarence House is where the king currently lives and has lived for quite a while now. Well, I think they're still redecorating Buckingham Palace, but it's where Philip and Elizabeth wanted to live before she became queen. They only got to enjoy it for a little while. They did the whole refurbishing thing. After Elizabeth became queen, the queen mum would move into Clarence House, initially with Princess Margaret.
Why, Mummy? Let Peter discuss it.
Elizabeth is noticing that something's going on between Margaret and Peter. I can imagine Elizabeth noticing. There's another thing that I feel is very exaggerated in The Crown, and that is the whole conflict between Elizabeth and Margaret over Peter Townsend. In reality, Elizabeth really fought for Margaret to get the marriage that she wanted. And the whole conflict between the two sisters, which is a returning theme throughout the seasons, is also, I think, exaggerated. The two were extremely close and would talk to each other on the phone every day. There was definitely not that much struggle between the two, no.
No, I quite see the attraction of Peter.
I don't. He's far too old. Also married, yeah, that's true. Oh, no.
It's time we gave that blockage a name, sir. It was a tumour. So what's next?
They make it seem like they keep it a secret for him for a really long time. I'm not sure that is very accurate. They just only really found out about it after they removed the lung, which makes a lot of sense if you think about it, because this is 1951.
It could be years, more likely months.
They really didn't know how long it might take. Months, I wouldn't say that they were expecting months. But as with even people having cancer today, it's very hard to know. I read somewhere that the train being used in this scene is from the late 1950s. So it's inaccurate, but that's such a detail. It looks amazing, I'm not complaining. I think this scene actually shows quite well how loved the royal family was at the time. Everyone was a monarchist in the 1950s. I mean, that has certainly changed throughout Elizabeth's lifetime. Yeah, I think they have an approval rating of what, 53%? Something like that. Those days were very different. Everyone had a picture of the queen in their house, or the king, I guess. It's just everyone loved the royals. Celebrating Christmas at Sandringham, the royals still do that. They go there every year. It's a house that was built or bought by Edward VII, Queen's great-grandfather. It's still in their personal possession. William and Kate have a house nearby. It's a favourite. That girl looks so much like an ex-colleague of mine that I absolutely could not stand, that I just can't enjoy this scene. This is an emotional scene where he's realizing that this is his last Christmas with his family and like his last Christmas of his life, and that is really sad and tragic, and they're all singing and everyone's looking happy and he's crying because, you know, he's dying. But that whole character of that one actress just ruins it for me. I will say that it's beautifully acted. The actor who plays King George does not look like King George at all. I have to say that. They have nothing, like the face is just completely different, but he's a really good actor. I love this costume of her in these trousers. She looks cool. Little Charles is so cute.
Are they a nuisance?
The boxes. Not if you keep on top of them.
The red boxes are still used. They get red boxes every day, the monarch does, with state papers in them. They have their royal initials on top of it. It's an iconic thing.
The first thing I do, no one is looking, is this.
I love this scene because it's him preparing her, which is a theme throughout the show, that supposedly she wasn't prepared enough. But he's doing it here.
Don't you get sick of it all?
I do.
And lonely?
Sometimes.
It's very sad that he admits that to her, but I think it's important that he does.
Which is why it's so important to have the right person by your side.
I actually agree that having a good consort is a make or break for royals. In modern times, looking throughout Europe at different sort of monarchies, but also in the past.
And then when your health's improved, we'll return to Malta.
I don't believe that at this point they ever planned on returning to Malta. I don't think that was in the cards.
Ceylon, Australia, then on to New Zealand, Bermuda, and there's talk of starting in Kenya.
We'll be gone months.
Yeah, these Commonwealth tours, they don't exist anymore. Members of the British royal family still definitely visit countries of the Commonwealth, not as often as I would like them to, but they still definitely do. but they take it like 3 or 4 countries at a time, sometimes one country at a time. So you'll have like a visit to Canada or a visit to New Zealand and Australia or a couple of countries in the Caribbean, you know, like that sort of thing. But definitely not months on end away. It's just too much of a strain on everyone. I think it's also partly because they just don't want to be out of Britain for that long. And in the case of, for example, William and Kate, well, they don't want to be away from the children for too long. But that is something that Elizabeth back in her day did. It's something that her parents back in the day did. When she was just born, her parents went on a Commonwealth tour. They would leave her as well as Margaret alone for months at a time. And then Elizabeth and Philip would also do these Commonwealth tours and leave in this case Charles and Anne behind for months on end. Bagpipes as an alarm clock, that is a Scottish tradition. They're not in Scotland. Sandringham is in England. I can totally see them bringing a bagpipe wherever they go. I would die if that would happen to me.
Bugger off.
I'm not sure that's the correct address for the King of England.
Mesmer's us. They got like a lot of criticism for this scene being like no point to it and everything. And I'm like, why does there always have to be point? Yeah, there are Wolverton Splash. Hunting on game is definitely a royal tradition that most members of the British royal family have always loved doing and actually love doing till this day. Even Kate knows her way around with a gun. Supposedly Meghan was against it and that's why Harry stopped. No clue if that's true. Yeah, apparently they're even teaching George how to hunt. It's not something that I support or that I enjoy about them. It's definitely something that George VI and Philip may have bonded over.
You understand, the titles, the dukedom, they're not the job. She is the job.
This is one of my favorite scenes in the whole show.
She is the essence of your duty.
He's making it very clear what his place in that family and that institution is. And he's making it seem like that place in the institution is a place of honor and a place that you can be proud of. And I feel like that is something that Philip definitely understood very well.
Loving her, protecting her.
I understand, sir.
Do you, boy? Do you really?
It's a very powerful scene. I love the music. It just looks so expensive, right? The crown, everything about it is just so expensive. The amount of money pushed in this show is ridiculous. And I'm so grateful that they did. Yeah, the score is beautiful here. I'm gonna have to edit that out, but you guys probably know what I mean. Yeah, so that was the first episode of The Crown. Kind of went through that really quickly. I don't know, I feel like maybe we should do a couple of more episodes. Maybe I can combine episodes. I was initially planning on doing it now, but I don't have the time to edit 2 episodes, so I'm just gonna do 1. But maybe we can do 2 more if you guys enjoyed this video. I really love doing this. Maybe we can do a different season. Let me know. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and see you guys next time.